He chewing on that metal, says it don't do harm. Plutonium in his pocket, like it's a lucky charm. But talk don't kill what's crawling, and them atoms at your bones. Said the dead don't count. Yeah, said the dead don't count. Ain't gone by morning. They cross your name out.
Hello, almost ready.
He got fruit on the table. Talk about Denver sky. But Curium run that river. Don't look, don't lie. They still lie to you with a smile full of steam. They still lie to you.
Woo! Love that.
But the ground still screams.
Brilliant, eh? Loving it. They're still lying to you about nuclear. I'm going to put a link in the description right to the side. Be sure to download it. Put it on your kit.
Shrink the core to trick you. Call it safe, call it trim. But the case still got teeth. And they chew your limb. They still lie to you. Same tongue, new crime. They still lie to you. And that core keep time.
It's crazy. So I got the link in the description. You can go listen to it, watch it, download it, send it out to all your friends, share it. So much music on his site. It's incredible. There's a story out about radioactive shrimp. Recall from Walmart. Sorry, still getting the show organized here. And cesium-137, of course. If you knew what a shrimp ate, you wouldn't eat it anyway. That's the reality of it. Not a bad thing. And because they're on the ocean floor, they're bioaccumulating serious radiation too, right? They're the scavengers. Okay, got a really good show for you tonight. There's such a thing as a good show in this topic. And I have a very informative show for you tonight. I think that sounds better than a good show. These are hard shows, so it's a lot of pre-work goes into it. And so just like last night when the show was over, I was pretty tired. It was heading for 1 o'clock in the morning my time. It's just, I'm not getting any younger. Here we go. So last night's show was nuclear for dummies, Fukushima for dummies type video. It's a very, very good video. It's an incredible video if you've never been introduced to this documentation before. And it's a foundation for the next week and a half. It might take longer. You'll appreciate what I'm saying as we get through this stuff. And so we're got a tendency to sit on the bigger screen because I'll pop in there at some point. Because people are using tablatures, people are using smartphones, people are using small screens in their office or something like that, right? And so I don't want them to see me as much as I want them to be able to read the documentation themselves or to screen capture it. Ships are ordered to slow down off the coast of New York after scientists discovered an ultra-rare species of whales. It's an ultra-rare for that area, probably, too. They're looking for food like all the other whales, and they ain't finding it. Since 2017, 34 dead stranded whales were confirmed. That's an important word, which meant at least 340 died along that area, because you only find 10% at best, according to NOAA, which is just a terrible organization, with the leading cause of death being human interaction. Really? Specifically from getting tangled up in fishing gear or being hit by vessels. The right whale, there's an unusual mortality event for them. Humpback whales, there's 7,000 of them now confirmed dead in the last few years. Starvation, the same as the gray whales and the beaked whales and every other species out there now. North Atlantic right whale, unusual mortality events. This has been going on. Now, last night we were kind of covering 2016. West Coast gray whale strandings declared an unusual mortality event 2019. Now, there's 14,000 died post-Fukushima, gray whales. 13,000 are left, and they were all emaciated on the migratory run south last year. There was no surviving babies. And now they're heading north, they're just dropping dead everywhere. Severe emaciation. Or as Noah would like to say, ship strikes. 2019, 2021 gray whale. Get another shrimp on the Barbie. Get another radioactive shrimp on the Barbie. James just put out another video, by the way. It was kind of telling a story anyway. You probably need the shrimp for the fusion. That's one of the last I came up with. I went and read this. He was linked to a story about fusion, and they're going to use reprocessing fuel. And this video here, Fukutronics. When I heard it. It's good rant, though, really, really good rant, and it's connected over to a gizmo or Engadget or something, one of nerd sites that are propaganda, like Popular Mechanics, brutal propaganda, brutal. About fusion, and then anyway, there's a story about the shrimp, right? A radioactive shrimp, and I was saying to myself, maybe they don't want you to eat the shrimp because you need them for fusion reactors. That would make sense. And the problem with the reactors is they need tritium. And they don't even have the fortitude to say tritium-3H, the spineless wimps. They put just tritium there. That's a very important. It might take us a while to get to it, unfortunately, because we're knee deep in die-offs right now. 2019-21 gray whale unusual mortality event. Now it's a non-stop unusual mortality event till they're gone. All the whales are emaciated. Everybody's out there with their finger up their arse and it's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening. That's what they're doing out there. They're out there in La La Land pretending this isn't happening, despite the fact that it's 100% worse than anything they imagined. In 2.5 years, there'll be no gray whales left. They're all emaciated. last year. It's absurd, right? 52% have died post-Fukushima. No way, Dana. It's plastic, Dana. That's what it is. Okay. You can live in denial as long as you like, but that don't mean the rest of us will. Manatee is now officially under a unusual mortality event. 2021, all the species are basically. 30 whales found dead in an unusual mortality event in Alaska. 14 humpback whales, 11 fin whales, a gray whale, found stranded on islands in the western Gulf and along the peninsula's southern shore. Severe emaciation you're looking at there, by the way. Do you remember this story of pilot whales? This is extraordinary, where they all got together. Wanting video footage of them all huddled together on Tuesday. They were all huddled, they all slowly came together and huddled together. And you can see one right in the middle looking up. Everything else, all the other whales are very passive, right? And then he went up on the beach and committed suicide. And we believe it's starvation because all the whales are doing it, all the species. This is it's something I've never seen before, this type of picture. Nobody else has it either. That's the first time this planet's seen something like that. And they live a very long lifespan, right? And so they have the ability to gather and do pass on. They teach the young tricks, right? The survival tricks, and they pass on all kinds of stuff. They have predators, so they're very oriented. All whales seem to have those particular attributes at some point. Recovery of a low mutant frequency after ionizing radiation. So you're going to see a bunch of these studies like this tonight. And because I had this voice running through my head today, this morning in particular, I got up this morning and I hear Jacqueline Yance from MIT. And I had done, we've done their, let me bring it up actually. So you can see audit, the orange one there, audit of MIT, and alongside of it, the next one over is Harvard. And up above it is Stanford University. That was this year's anniversary. I went and dissected, I audited their presentations on Fukushima after Fukushima had happened. Now I had done that twice before. I'm getting better at it. And all I'm going to do is, if you tell a lie, and I can prove it's a lie, I'm just going to come out and show you the documentation of my assertion, and I'm going to move on to the next lie, and then move on to the next institution, then on to the next one, et cetera, right? That's all I'm really doing anyway. But in that case there, for the anniversary, I've done 14 videos for the anniversary, the 14th anniversary this year. And each one of them was to tell you a story about Fukushima, a certain facet of it. So it's a very complicated subject for sure, but it's necessary that this kind of information actually exists so that people that want to know have the opportunity. Because otherwise they're not going to get the opportunity to understand the picture, or see the pictures for that matter. So audit of Stanford University is a really good video. The Harvard University, these are very informative videos. They did tell some truths. You were able to tease some truths out of their lies on top of that. And we were able to show you why making those assertions in each of those presentations. Okay. So in the audit of MIT Department of Nuclear Science and the engineering briefing, I got 162 views, by the way, which is probably more than their video. Their original video. I get censored because the last thing I want to do is have my voice out there, I can assure you. The 31st of July, they got a lot of crimes they got to hide. And they got 1,000 public relation firms working them full-time at it. In more ways than most people can appreciate. 31st of July 2008 study, recovery of low mutant frequencies after ionizing radiation induced deformities. And so Jacqueline Yates at MIT was brought in by telephone. She no longer was at MIT University, which has tons of nuclear academics. Instead, they brought in Jacqueline Yates. And she said there was no releases, there was no emissions, there was no danger, and the radiation in the mountains was worse than Fukushima, even though multiple reactors had already detonated. But when I play the video coming up, you'll appreciate why that was spinning in my head, because it'll get into your head too. It just keeps popping up all the time. Recovery of low mutant frequency after ionizing radiation induced. So ionizing radiation induced. So all of these studies are going to be based upon ionizing radiation induced. Right, so ionizing radiation, man-made anthropogenic ionizing radiation from nuclear reactors, the emissions, those types of atoms, man-made anthropogenic atoms, induced some kind of illness or disease or autoimmune deficiency or injury in many, many different species in experiments. And, some of these studies are really sick. There's some sick stuff, and what they've done to animals is just holy shit. What's wrong with you people? So when they say very little is known about low doses of ionizing radiation, and you're going to hear that quite a bit, because I'm going to play that little clip later on, just as a reminder, and then show you 5 or 10 of these at a time. And I want you to appreciate that they actually do know a lot, and the evidence is everywhere. It's easy for anybody to go out and find it. And I'm just going to walk you through some of it. And so to have the experts saying that this doesn't exist and that everything is based on 1 minute to a human dose, their criteria, is a pretty rotten thing to do, especially when they're supposed to be MIT, the shaker, the biggest shaker remover on the planet. So all of these studies are based upon ionizing, low doses of ionizing radiation for the most part, not always, but most of it is low doses of ionizing radiation, and there's a trigger effect in the victims. Cancer risk associated with low dose ionizing radiation. You'll get the picture. I won't have to read through too many of them. Chronic ionizing radiation might suppress resistance to pathogens in plants. These are important studies, by the way. The potential antioxidant effect of blah, 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 X-ray ionizing radiation induced blah, blah, blah. So they studied every facet of everything is what you're going to take away from this tonight. I'm not going to try to examine each of these studies, because it was just to show you they exist, and that the scientists therefore knew they existed, and that their assertions that very little is known, and this is what their assertions were after Fukushima, as you're about to hear, is just it's how is it free? It's unforgivable that they would do something like that, and then call themselves a person, and that there's no one to hold them accountable unless we do this video tonight and tell that story. So the video is not too long. It's like a 2.5 minute clip that I had chopped out, I don't know, a long time ago, 12, 13 years ago or something.
Also, possibly on the phone, although I don't see a phone, Jackie Yench.
Possibly on a phone, I don't see a phone. Jackie Yench. Now, when you're seeing pictures of different contexts, typically that's stuff I added in.
Who's in Spain. Jackie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic.
So why did the audience, you'll hear him laughing. Why is he laughing? Why is she laughing?
Last year, Jackie was also...
See, I didn't know it was a joke. Did you know it was a joke? I didn't know I was supposed to laugh.
Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. Until last year, Jackie was a professor in the Department of Nuclear Science and Engineering. She continues to be affiliated with us, and she's a specialist on radiation health effects.
I'm here. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question.
The question had to do with what are the prospects for long-term contamination in the area around the reactor? I think that was the question.
In terms of the amount of release or the consequences of a release? I mean, there's been very little that seems to have been released and dispersed beyond the containment.
So I put these models there. But the video they shot, that presentation was March the 14th. This is March the 15th. And on the 14th, by the way, reactor 1 and reactor 3 had already detonated in reactor 2. And then that night or next morning, reactor 4 detonated. You see, it's detonated. And now every academic knew when he seen that, and she would have seen similar pictures. So she wasn't like she was uninformed. They all would have seen this picture, reactor 1 exploding. Janssen, MIT, everybody at MIT would have seen that picture. There was nothing funny, by the way, to laugh about on the 14th when they shot that video. Reactor 3 had already happened the day before. There was nothing funny about this. And the audience clearly was a pro-nuclear audience. It was a seated audience, completely seated with the pro-nuclear community, students. And some of them, of course, were asking questions. Well, I'm a nuclear engineer, a PhD, and blah, 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 multiple times. So when you see this, any academic looking at that right now, if they've never seen Fukushima, would know the reactors were gone. So why was MIT laughing and carrying on in jovial? Why were they happy? You had 3 reactors detonate. You had 18,000 people killed by a tsunami. There was nothing to joke about at this point. This was within a couple of days of the meltdowns and the tsunami. They still haven't rescued most of the people yet. There was nothing funny for them to laugh about.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with.
There's almost no data about how much we can live with. So this is some of the children from Chernobyl. They had lots of data.
In terms of elevated background levels. All of our data about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the doses delivered in less than a minute.
So the numbers they're using are doses in less than a minute. They have no data, but they have Chernobyl. Chernobyl actually happened. They had endless data from that, for starters.
And so we just don't know how much radiation can be, what kind of contamination level can be considered safe.
We just don't know. We don't know. Even though they 100% know, thousands of children in Belarus and Ukraine had to get open heart surgery, for goodness sakes, because of Chernobyl. There's just orphanage after orphanage after orphanage of abandoned children. There's zero possibility. They don't know about this. Like their doses are not on a single, and the experiment they're using is a single healthy 25-year-old male, perfect weight, perfect health, and getting a dose, for whatever that might mean, they don't clarify that, in a 1-minute period. We don't know how big the dose is, what kind of dose, whether it's gammas, alphas, neutrons, or betas. But Chernobyl, clearly they know that low doses are catastrophic. And so when you see all of these studies, remember Jacqueline Jantz's words, Dr. Jacqueline Jantz's words, there's little that we know when in reality, you'd be shocked at the millions and millions and millions of studies they have Population sensitivity of animals to chronic ionizing radiation. Predictions from mice to elephants. I guess we fit in there, do we? Evaluations of low-dose ionizing radiation effects on some blood components in animal models based on...
I mean, some parts of the world are at natural dose rates which are 40 times the dose rates.
Natural is irrelevant. You can't bioaccumulate natural radiation. It has nothing to do with man-made. You can't conflate them.
We're living with 40 times the dose rate Japan has as a natural background.
40 times Japan's dose of natural background. Japan is not looking for a natural background. The Geiger counters can't find it. It's looking for man-made. It's just really, how can these people look anybody in the eye? How can they, do they have a soul? What's going on here? Those the people will get to work at the International Atomic Energy Agency.
And no adverse effects have been noted. But as I say, there has not been a careful study of just how much is too much.
There has not been a careful study of how much is too much. It's surreal if somebody actually would say something like that. But that's all they actually have is an endless amount of studies. The ionizing radiation is unbelievably studied. It's inconceivable how many millions of studies they actually have, pre-Fukushima on top of that.
And there's going to be a trade-off between having people leave their homes forever or for long periods of time and living with an elevated background level. And we don't know whether, we don't really know, like I said, how much is too much to live with.
Really? Despite the fact that you have millions and millions of those studies. They know everything about it. They've studied anthropogenic man-made radiation hundreds and hundreds of times more than all the elements from the solar system. And prevention of liver damage due to ionizing radiation in rats. It's just, how many billions of creatures have each country killed? It's really something. And just a terrible way to die, and then their bodies are radioactive. And a lot of it is released to street vendors in impoverished countries as food. Bone marrow targeted. So, and one of the other takeaways from this is, you'll see all of these studies on radiation, but yet they've never cured cancer with it. People don't die of cancer from radiation. They die of radiation poisoning or chemical poisoning from the chemotherapy. Their autopsies never say died of cancer. If they go and get radiation chemotherapy, the death is always from the destructions of the organs, from the proton beams, the brutal radioactive doses. Inject it right into their veins. Ionizing radiation as a carcinogen. No crap.
I think many of our students may not know that there's a long history of close ties between MIT and Japan.
A long history of ties of MIT and Japan. That was my Geiger count the day before. Fukushima Reactor 3, Fukushima Reactor 4. So according to Jacqueline Yates and the International Atomic Energy Agency, nothing got edited. MIT and Harvard and Stanford and Yale. Effects of ionizing radiation on cells, they know everything about it. There's nothing they don't know about it, is the reality of it. And they also know it doesn't cure you.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with in terms of elevated background levels. All of our data about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the doses delivered in less than a minute. And
To a
so
healthy
we just don't
25-year-old.
know how much radiation can be, what kind of contamination level can be considered safe.
We just don't know. How many times does she say that in the whole video, I wonder? She's seen that and she's seen that. And she would have known there's no safe, period, anywhere. Yet her assertions and MIT's was nothing got off the site. So all of these studies, I'm not going to try to go through every one, but every one of these studies are based on ionizing radiation. So for anybody to suggest we don't know very much is either stupid or just a degenerate pro-nuclear. Ionizing radiation induces mild and dose-independent damage to mitochondria in newt cells. Ionizing radiation, veterinarian medicine. Oh man, what they do to some pets, what they actually do to some pets is criminal. Damaging effects of ionizing radiation. They have absolutely no idea. They have no idea what the damaging effects are. Very little is known. This MIT, the holy grail of nuclear. They've been promoting nuclear for 90 plus years, 98 years. They've just recently done an anniversary. Excuse me. And that's the thing about the nuclear industry is you have an anniversary for everything you can imagine. Like I would love to see the nuclear industry's calendars. Every day is some kind of multiple anniversaries worldwide for something or another. Nuclear, so great. Problem is, it never ever cured cancer, but it killed everybody that it was injected into. Bird researchers say it's too soon to tell if the carcasses are part of a mass die-off. It's too soon, eh? you got a mass die-off going off everywhere, and well, maybe those carcasses all over the beach or something else. It's too soon. The oclets. The uranol peroxide enhanced nuclear fuel corrosion in seawater. The sulfur is liberated from the seawater by temperatures, high temperatures, particularly with nuclear. They knew this in the 50s, 60s, that it would make these spherical balls, and inside of them you can get a uranium, plutonium, americium, curium isotope or whatever, and it turns into, because of the sulfur structure, it's very mobile, it's not solutable in water, and it can easily travel around the world without jet streams. And that it was a very hot particle. Yeah. Did anybody see the story about the rabbit with horns and like weird shit growing out of his body, out having a munch in nature? Unprecedented spike, 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur per cubic meter was detected in California air. And the name we gave it was sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs because of its particular attributes. To identify it as just a nasty, and they were aware of this during Castle Bravo bomb test in the Marshall Islands. Just the Castle Bravo test itself, the single one, multiple megaton, was equal to over 1,000 Nagasaki bombs going off at the one time. And we got the video there. I can probably find it if you really want me to. Where did he say it was a 5,000 square mile lethal zone. And that was the underwater test. And I'm assuming, and I'm assuming correctly, I bet you, that it was because of the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyball effect. Because it was a massive bomb, and so you cannibalized a lot of salt water, and the combination of it made it a lethal threat for over 5,000 miles. And recent die-offs are believed to be caused by a shortage of prey. We like to call it starvation. I'm just trying to be funny, I guess. It's a shortage of prey, Dana. Oh, okay. So when 1 million birds die, they have no muscle mass, they have no food in their body, they literally starve to death. I'm not allowed to say that. I got to say shortage of prey. It was a pretty big shortage. It was such a big shortage, 1 million died. I don't think you call that a shortage of prey. I think you call it an apocalyptic event. More than 100,000 Cassini octopus were found dead along the northern coast from British Columbia to California. Starvation was found to be the cause. Oh, that was nice of you. It turned out to be 1.4 million. About 3 or 4 years later, they came out with the number. They were trying to blame it on domoic acid, as usual, and it's never come true. We just have probably 100 stories where they tried to blame a mass die-off on domoic acid. That was the first thing coming out of their mouth every time. We got no proof, but we think it was domoic acid. But they know how radiation works in a species, as you'll keep seeing over and over and over. I can see the scientists right now. Woo, baby, I'm getting double time. Yeah. It's hard to comprehend how 4 buildings can cause so much carnage, can wipe out the species on the planet. I guess I got to bring up the poll at some point. My stream's been yellow ever since 5 minutes into the show. That's usually them sitting there on the trigger waiting to shut me down, I guess. The Fukushima nuclear fallout and the perpetual radiation releases permanently destroy the ecosystem worldwide. And I actually put I do it every stream anyway, I actually put a new stream key in the encoder before I went live, right? And I have over a gigabyte a second stream, up and stream down. They just endlessly mess with me, eh? They got nobody else to pick on. I'm like a little fly and every kid wants to pull my wings off in the nuclear industry. The Fukushima nuclear fallout and the perpetual radiation releases, Fukushima still not stopped. It'll probably never stop. Japan is full of fuel particulates that are splitting atoms, for goodness sakes. The whole country. Destroyed ecosystem. They grinded up all the stuff locally, took it to other prefectures and burned it in incinerators. You can't destroy radiation by burning it in incinerators. You're just going to spread it all over that area even worse. Nothing makes any sense. Why would you even build nuclear power plants on a fault line in the first place? Right along, within 100 miles, 100 kilometers rather, of tectonic plates of all things, with a 3,000-year history of tsunamis up to 300 feet high. Oh yeah, well let's build it right down there by the ocean. Oh, which way the winds blow? They're always blowing to Canada, United States. Oh, it'll be okay then. Tell me that was an accident, and I'll tell somebody who's not really using their noggin. 8,000 common murres found dead on Whittier, Alaska beach. Uh, 8,000. Hang on. How's my stream? Is my stream jittery? Because we got that yellow thing of death there the whole night. I'm not seeing anybody saying that, so I'm assuming it's all good. Let's keep going. 8,000 common murres found on Whittier, Alaska beach. Apparently starved to death. Apparently. Why would you put the word apparently there? Apparently, inside of that building, 150 feet above the building, this is what it looks like. And you can ask all those journalists, they'll tell you they're at the top of reactor 4 at Fukushima. That's what it did look like after detonations. That truck there is pretending to put fuel in the fuel pool. The fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. There is no top to the buildings. Right, they built the top on the building. That doesn't make it a top to the building, right? Right there, but this contraption. There, look, see where my finger is right there? How it's cut down into the building itself? The other side of that, you can't see it in that picture. I got other pictures. I think this one here. Yeah, you see that dip over there? You'll like this, just bear with me. Because we got so much to get through. I don't think we're ever going to get through it. I don't know how the hell I'm going to get through 6,448 screen captures. And I keep adding more every day. How does that work, I wonder? How do I get through all of that? So where my fingers, see that horseshoe right there? All right. Okay. Hang on. You see the horseshoe over there? Don't go move my finger. I'll move my finger, Dana. You see that horseshoe? It's right there. It's right there. It's the same one that is right here. Okay. Now we establish right here and right there stuff. So the fuel pools are at the top of the buildings, and there is no top to the building. So they built the top on the building, and then they got the media worldwide to make the claim that they were actually at the top of Fukushima Reactor 4. But underneath the contraption that they got there, it looks like this. So where did Reactor 4 go to, Dana? Oh, I thought you never asked. Well, this is a model after 19.5 days, 468 hours. It covered Earth. And this is an accurate depiction if you exclude the fact that it didn't count any of the fuel pools or any of the reactor cores. It's literally based up on venting. But pretending that the reactors didn't blow up, didn't catch fire, didn't melt down, didn't lose their inventories. And I can never go back to that world. I don't think I ever was at that world, but once you look at the building, you know where the fuel pools are at the top of the building with the reactor core. You know there's no top to the building. You know it has to be underwater, deep, and they have to add 120,000 liters each day to the pool. Every nuclear scientist looked at that and said, yep, that gone. Fuel pool's gone. Congenital heart disease operations rose 14.2%, but very little is known about how much radiation is too much. Right, Jacqueline Yentz? That's her there, actually, celebrating. Alarm over dolphin and porpoise deaths in the Black Sea, 2016. And they can't glean much from that. 108 dolphins were found dead along the country's Black Sea coast since January, twice the number found in all of 2015. Pre-Fukushima, you never find any. Nature, if you did one died, nature would take care of it right away. 35 dead porpoises were found washed up on local beaches during one weekend this month. There's 300 dolphin and porpoises deaths in 2015 over there. And they suggested gill nets and illegal fishing, everything else. But porpoise meat is a popular meat in that part of the country, so they wouldn't have thrown it away. Claims there were over 300 dolphins and porpoises recorded in 2015. Massive radioactive releases in Fukushima going on for almost 3 years, not just the tip of the iceberg. The containments are not broken. They lost all their inventories. The containment were just, they heated up and they're already at 1,000 pounds plus per square inch, right? And so they don't get their 6.45 million one-ton pickup trucks of water a day, 1 ton pickup each, 1 ton of water for each pickup. So if you try to say how much water does it use, that's a good way to tell the stories. 6.45 million 1 ton pickup trucks. So just look at it this way: you got 6.5 million 1 ton pickup trucks. Now here's 6.5 million keys for 6.545 million 1 ton pickup trucks. You got to organize that every day. It's a bit overwhelming, right? So every 24 hours you got to keep gassing them. You got to Make sure they all got good tires and windshield wash and get their oil changed. Every day you got to do that. Man, it's a lot of energy just for one, that's each reactor, isn't it? Yeah, for each reactor. Not the whole site, but just per reactor a day. So 6.45 million tons of water a day. Or 6.45 million one-ton pickup trucks with 1,000 liters in the back of each one every 24 hours. You don't get it. They go from 1,000 pounds per square inch to 1,000, 2,000, 2,500, and then kaboom. And that's what you're seeing in the videos, right? These weren't hydrogen explosions. These were pressure explosions. Clearly, that's what they were. If they were hydrogen, you would have seen a massive continuous flame, right? It would have been huge, like an undeniable, because hydrogen is very volatile, right? And so you would have seen that. These were pressure. And when they blew up, there was some flame, but it wasn't what you would expect from a actual hydrogen displacement, right? Because hydrogen has displaced the oxygen. If you introduce hydrogen back in, it'll detonate. I got 100 square miles of forest burning just not too far from me. And she's deep underground too, right? There's no bacteria, fungus in the ground anymore to hold the water post-Fukushima. Radiation doses northeast Great Lakes equal to the west coast. Map shows Fukushima fallout in the United States and Canada. The radiation dosed in the northeast and Great Lakes were equal to the west coast. So the interior was brutalized too. Well, of course it was. The whole planet was. Let me give you one more. I haven't given you any examples. Now, last night I introduced you to Fukushima and everything else. And it was basically a preamble with some stories at the last part of it. And tonight we're just going to get after it because we got too much, and I'm adding more every day. 23 days of radioactive fallout. This was the French government of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air after 23 days. That's a map of Earth. And so that doesn't go away, return to fairy dust, because the government doesn't cover it or the media doesn't cover it. That study was by the French government, by the way. You remember the orca was carrying her baby around for, it was 2 weeks or something? I was still up by Alaska on a sailboat researching species counts, because we were doing 4 to 5 months a year, each year for 6 years. And that got the best of me up there. That was the end of the day. The high number of male babies in a group of killer whales living off the coast of British Columbia is cause for concern. The high number of male babies. Oh, I got you. So one of the studies they do after nuclear accidents is sex ratio studies. And they study, what they're looking for is more males than females. And so even test reactors, they'll do those studies from proximity, let's say 15 miles circumference of it. And you'll see if there's because you have the statistical information available now through digital, right? So it's even easier for them to do. But they've always done that. And that's the marker of radiation brain damage, right? You get more males than females, which is less population. So only one of the calves have been confirmed as a female, who could spell trouble for the whale's future, because you need females to reproduce. And that was Ken Balcom. He died, I think it was last year, was it? Ideally, you get more or less a 50-50 ratio in the sexes. And they weren't. But they do that for humans. Now you can equate it with all the species in your country. Because it's not just humans that are affected by radiation. Researchers are looking why there's so many more males in the latest baby boom. Something to do with the toxic environment that's affecting the fetus. It's called Fukushima, stupid. They They won't mention radiation. It's very rare. Originally, we were getting reports. Necropsy of beach whale finds no clue to the cause of death. Humpback whales live 60 or more years and usually die of natural causes, Dana. Well, that's a sperm whale there. Mass sperm whale deaths across Europe leave scientists stumped. 30 males have washed ashore in Holland, Germany, northern France, UK since January. And we covered a lot of that at the beginning of the show last night. And different stages of decomposition. Now, the strandings, beaching, they usually go up and beach because they can't keep their blowhole out of the water and they don't want to drown, right? Yet scientists are hardly any clearer on what caused so many huge whales to be grounded in shallow. From what we've seen, it was starvation, right? The headlines we were covering. And they even acknowledged it in the first couple of stories. They were far from their usual hunting habitat in the deep North Atlantic, where they can plunge 6,500 feet or more, preying on gigantic squid. Till we get clear results from the autopsy being carried out, it's all just speculation. But it's not because we covered it. They died of starvation. Large numbers of whales beaching at the same time is very likely to occur again in the coming decades. One thing is certain, he says. Yeah, well, Fukushima became real, see? 865,000 extra cancer patients in the first year. Not everybody's diagnosed, not everybody got health care, or not everybody can go to the doctor. It's not any cancers, there's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems. Whales spotted in New York Harbor. That was a big story. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Boaters in New York Harbor made a rare sighting on Thursday morning, a whale near the Statue of Liberty. How could a whale survive in all that pollution? I know what you're saying. A rare sighting. The A-10 Warthog only shoots dirty bombs. And it can shoot 1.5 tons a minute. And so during the Gulf War, if that's what you want to call it, the Kuwaiti conflict, they used these things on the highway of death of Rolls Royces and limousines full of loot and booty stolen from jewelry stores and everything else in Kuwait. Rolex watches and fancy paintings from museums. They basically, the Ba'ath Party looted from Iraq, looted Kuwait, which was an unbelievably wealthy, still is wealthy country. They sent in, there was 300,000 Rolls Royces and Porsches and limousines. They stole everything. And they just shot them up with this stuff. And the first line of tanks had bulldozers on the front of them. And so the Ba'ath Party had put the most impoverished people, never had no shoes or nothing, so they couldn't run away in the desert in those trenches. And all they done was just bury them alive in the trenches. Talk about post-traumatic disorders. Degradation, ionizing radiation. So all these studies are about ionizing radiation. Ionizing radiation induces. All the studies are based on that theme, but officially don't know very much about ionizing radiation. But the reality of it is they got millions and millions of studies like this. Like, it's amazing how many studies they've actually produced. And we're only talking North America. We're not talking about all the other countries. Doing the same thing, by the way. And so one of the things that I want you to take away from all of these studies is they studied everything. They studied stuff you would never think of. They studied stuff I never think of. They study stuff that the average academic would probably never think of. They study every facet of every creature in the biota, everything. There's nothing they haven't studied in the ecosystem with radiation. There's nothing they haven't repeated hundreds of times. Radiation-induced, ionizing radiation-induced damage. Ionizing radiation. It's really something, isn't it? Ionized radiation-induced damage. Is there a link? Of course there is. Induced by intermediate frequency magnetic field. So they study everything. They study the studies of the studies of the studies of the studies. And this was an interesting one. If you can find healthy mushrooms, it will help to aggregate radiation out of your body, some of it. Because Mushrooms are a natural aggregator, one of the worst aggregators, rather. So I'm terrified of mushrooms. I'm terrified of it. Your Geiger counter can't find, where's mine, Tony? Your Geiger counter can't find most of the radiation anyway. So why take the chance when you know it's going to aggregate radiation? 9 blue whales died after getting trapped off Canada's east coast, Newfoundland. 9 whales died. They're not supposed to be there. They're there because they were starving to death, and that was desperation. The blue whales, up to 200 tons, 100 feet long, the diet consists almost exclusively of krill, and krill is one of the biggest aggregators of radiation in the food chain, right? Many species are dependent upon that as a migratory source. In general, blue whale populations migrate between their summer feeding areas near the poles and their winter breeding grounds near the tropics. So they get leukemia because they're bioaccumulating so much. A dead blue whale washed ashore in western Newfoundland. Japan likens anti-whaling campaign to an attempt to ban the kimono. So first they contaminate the entire planet. Many times, not just their own country, destroy their own country, but everything else too. All the water, fresh and salt on the entire planet is brutally destroyed by radioactive fallout. And you don't know why the world is upset with them for going out killing whales, more whales. They were permitted to kill 1,000 mainly minke whales a year for scientific research. You don't need to kill 1,000 whales for scientific research. You simply don't. So the average whale is 26,000 pounds. That's 26 million pounds. For research, do you really think they need 26 million pounds of whale meat for research? You really think they're gonna, like, how many vials will you get out of 26 million pounds of whale? 600 trillion or something like that? Yeah, it sounds sensible. They need that for research, Dan. And of course they do. Who am I to say anything? Meat from the slaughtered whales is sold on the open market. The research, I guess, is to see if people will still buy it. And they can still make a profit off it. Pregnant orca was starving and carrying a dead fetus, says the report. It's 2014. Was likely underfed for a long time before it died. It starved to death. The emaciated orca and emaciated baby. Orca's blubber layer was relatively thin and dry of oil, finding that point to extended malnourishment, starvation. Just call it emaciation. So death highlights a dire lack of food for southern resident killer whales. But actually there's all kinds of halibut, all kinds of octopus, all kinds of birds, all kinds of seals and sea lions. There's all kinds of other species that don't just eat salmon, Ken. If they can't find salmon, then they're going to eat something else. That's how hunger works, Ken. Ken's dead now. Unfortunately, you can't hear me. Maybe he can. Who knows? Yeah, I got a killer whale on the beach. Looking pretty thin. A 1,000 years from now, contaminated water from Fukushima may be still entering the Pacific Ocean, and it's necessary to keep monitoring during that time. But it's not, Dana. I just asked Jacqueline.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data, about how much radiation we can live with.
We have almost no data. No data. No data. So all of these studies are low-dose ionizing radiation, which induce some kind of autoimmune trigger illness or disease or autoimmune deficiency or injury. But little is known, Dana. We don't know there's little not known is what you meant to say, probably. High dose ionizing radiation accelerates blah, 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 blah. Like, they know everything. They know it long before Fukushima. And they never stopped doing studies on Chernobyl, for goodness sakes. A bit of a actor tonight. I'm ahead of the game tonight. Booyah, baby. Get smarter as I get older. They don't know nothing about it, Dana. They know absolutely everything.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with in terms of elevated background levels. All of our data about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the doses delivered in less than a minute. And so we just don't know how much radiation can be, what kind of contamination level can be considered safe.
I can see her practicing before they went live. Let's do that again.
Now, unfortunately,
No, unfortunately,
we have very little data,
we have very little data.
almost no data
I was nodding.
about how much radiation we
But how much? I can see her in front of the mirror. And, there's too many tears. I can't do that.
can live with in terms of elevated background levels. All of our data come about the health effects of radiation.
Comes from a healthy 25-year-old male. A healthy 25-year-old male with 1 minute exposure.
Come from a situation in which all the doses delivered in less than a minute. And so we just don't know how much radiation can be, what kind of contamination level can be considered safe.
So have a nice day. Ruthless, eh? Just ruthless murderers. That's the way it is, boy, in the academic world. Ionizing radiation-induced intestinal injuries. What? It can hurt you? I never heard nuclear scientists ever tell me that before, Dana. Yeah, I hear you. I feel you, man. Advances in metallic nanostructures assist laser desorption, ionization, mass spectrometry, imaging of biological samples. They study everything! They study everything! There's nothing they don't study. Ionizing induced defect annealing by fission product ions in Bing Jang Gong. They're like, oh, more dead whales. They won't be happy till they're all dead. Tell you right now. Mark it down, take it to the bank. They won't shed a tear, and they won't give up till every whale, every bird is dead. Then they'll be like, let's get rid of the humans. They're next. Used to be a headache. Here we go. Let's keep her rolling. Here we're on a roll. You got to catch the beginning. If you didn't catch the beginning, you missed the big one. 9 killer whales. Watch that after if you're just joining us. 9 killer whales die in rare mass beaching in New Zealand. 9 killer whales. Anybody remember that one? New Zealand, the whale serial killer capital of the world. That's where whales go to die. That's the end of their route. They run out of food. They get to New Zealand. There's nothing there, and they just give up the ghost. I know that shape, right? That shape is suggesting emaciation. Should be no concave. Should be very fluent skin. Oh, what did the great doctor say, I wonder? Well, they're used to going up on beaches. They chase prey up literally every day, like seals and that, and they'll grab them. they'll hang out on the shoreline. They'll have other whales like they're steaming away. And then when the whale goes back into the water, they'll have a couple of these hanging out there, and boom! They'll go right up out of the water, and they'll work their way back into the ocean. The only reason a whale would go up on the beach against his will is because he can't breathe. It can't keep his blowhole out of the water. And that's I'm assuming that's it's like a flight and fight type thing we have, right? Where that should go to when you're having problems keeping your blowhole out of the water. When you're starving to death, we've never seen this before. We've never seen anything like this. Everything is post-Fukushima. We've never seen any of that before. Of 9 killer whales washed up dead on Wednesday in a rare mass stranding on the New Zealand coast. A beluga whale population in St. Lawrence, Canada, on a catastrophic path. What was the date? I'm sorry. 2014. It's a catastrophic trajectory we're observing. So the effects within a couple of years were distinct. It was right away. There was mass die-offs. The whole world kind of noticed that phenomenon, right? And we don't yet know exactly what are the causes for that. 16 cats were found dead in 2012, a year after Fukushima. And whales are found to be dying of cancer. Post-Fukushima. That's crazy stuff. NOAA said it counted 28 whale strikes in northeastern waters between 26 and 2010. Worldwide, a National Marine Fisheries Service survey covering 1975 to 2002 found 292 records of confirmed or possible ship strikes to large whales. Now the University of Berkeley is saying there's 20,000 a year. Whales are just going to ramming boats until they die, apparently. But one of their examples was a humpback whale. And there were 7,000 humpback whales died in the last couple of years of starvation, not ship strikes. The whole industry is just rotten. All your major universities, the media is just rotten to the core. You can't even have a conversation with the people that watch it. People refuse to give up watching it. They're addicted to bullshit. Unless it's on TV, then it doesn't matter to their conscience. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever saw. Well, it is hypnotized, right? There's many examples. So like the original TV sets, for the first couple of decades in particular, were set at the same frequency as a child's brain. And, the kids wake up in the morning, sit in front of the TV, they couldn't hear their parents. And then they go in the bathroom and eat all that fluoride on their toothpaste, because it's nice and sweet and tastes like candy, and they're poisoned. I done it once, and it dropped me for about 2 minutes. Like all I done was eat a bead of, don't do it for goodness sakes, I ate a bead of toothpaste about the length of the toothbrush. And I ate it. And I ended up on the floor, sweating and weak, and it was unreal for 2 minutes. And then I started to get my energy back, and I was able to sit up after the next 30 seconds or a minute. But that was literally poison. It even says if you swallow this, call the Poison Control Center. And so kids will eat that, brush their teeth, come out and sit on the couch. They can't hear, they're poisoned. I have a bigger body mass, look what it done to me. And then the TV set the frequency of the brain. The parents say, you gotta go to school. Ah! They can't hear the parents, they're not ignoring the parents. You're ignoring me. I'm gonna tell your father. And they're like, I wasn't ignoring, but the kids don't even remember it because they can't hear it. They're hypnotized by this frequency from the TV. Australia made it illegal for 4-year-old and younger to watch TV because of that particular attribute. Or changing the food source is suggested by NOAA. That's why the whales are dying. That's why they're hitting all the ship's data. The numbers are up because they claim more whales, but there was not more whales. More whales dying. A change in the food source, as suggested by NOAA. But very little is known about the effects of ionizing radiation. Did you know that? Very little. Except they actually know everything about it. There's nothing that they don't know about it by the looks of it. By the way, I got all these studies today because I'm stupid. I'm a sucker for punishment.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with.
We got nothing, so it's okay. Why are they bringing in somebody on a telephone when the MIT University is full of nuclear academics? Why not use one of them? Oh, they were too busy in the audience laughing. The protective effect of hyperbaric oxygen ionizing radiation injuries. If you know, I don't know if I will, but I might do somewhere the week or next week. Might do the radiation therapy so people can really appreciate how sick and twisted this industry actually is. The most criminal thing on the planet is calling radiation therapy radiation therapy. That's literally criminal to do that. It clearly has nothing to do with therapy and everything to do with killing you and your loved ones. It's sadistic to take your loved one to a hospital and subject them to that kind of torture. That's torture. That'll make me popular. Non-ionizing radiation induced. So all of these studies tonight, and tomorrow night, the night after, are all going to be based on non-ionizing radiation induced. But very little is known about low doses of radiation. Okay. But it's clear they know everything about it. And if it wasn't for that voice in my head this morning torturing me, Jacqueline Yancey's voice from MIT, very little is known, and it just kept playing in my head. I'm like, stop it! Stop! And finally, I had to come in here, sit down, and drag that in there, chop it up, and start grabbing stuff. And then the voice slowly went away, but not all the way. It'll probably be even worse tonight. Because I'm sick of this slaughter. I'm sick of watching everybody heart being broken, losing their loved ones. I'm sick of everybody being gullible and stupid and unreasonable. On rats' gland cells after ionizing radiation. Experimental study and an animal model. Where they killed billions of animals and they felt guilty and then made a few models. 25 pilot whales found dead near Marco Island. Hut one, hut two, hut three. Deceased mammals were discovered 2 days after the death of 8 pilot whales, 40 miles north. And come a month after, more than 50 whales were found in the Everglades. Their cause of death has still not been determined. Necropsies performed on 8 of the whales, pilot whales, that died at Lover's Key on Monday, and Tuesday showed all the animals had empty stomachs. They're not going to die just because they missed a meal. They died because they missed a lot of meals for a very long time. The whales that died in the Everglades also had empty stomachs. And this was 2016. 2014. We had the same thing for 2015, 2016, by the way. So all the species last night, everything had died of starvation. All the species tonight had all died of starvation. Dana, you're fear-mongering. I know, I'm sorry. Food is overrated. Thanks, Dana. Skin lesions, pneumonia, brain and other infections. Just another day in the aqua world post-Fukushima. The deceased whales discovered Thursday included 16 females and 9 males. Deep colder water, about 20 miles offshore from the pilot whale's natural habitat. Once they get too close to shore, they become dehydrated, Dana. Yeah, how's that work? Well, they're close to shore, so now they're getting dehydrated. I can tell, Dana, I'm a nuclear scientist. And they get disoriented. They're not used to land, Dana. They're just stupid animals, Dana. Making it difficult to get further back out to sea. Okay, and they had empty stomachs, right? Stupid. There was no other significant initial findings outside that they had empty stomachs. You're getting lucky this time, Dana. And that's what the nuclear scientists, the academics will do. They'll go down, they'll see the dead whale, they get a selfie so they can show all their buddies at work. I killed another one. 7 dead sperm whales found dead on the beach in South Australia, 2014. Sperm whales. Sperm whale. We've never heard tell of 2 sperm whales on the same beach, or any other whales pre-Fukushima. But sperm whales, which are dependent upon a very vulnerable species known as squid, very vulnerable to radiation. It's extremely rare mass strandings. Well, it was, now it's normal. Now we're like, so what? Who cares? It's normal, man. They're always running up on beaches now. Everything post-Fukushima, all these catastrophic events are normal. Now they're normal. We've been covering it for so long. To me, of course, and to you, obviously, they're not normal. Found themselves, but in one sense, they are normal now. To the normies out there, the newbies, which is an awesome thing, by the way, found themselves caught in a low tide. 6 of the whales found on the beach were already dead. So they were alive when they ran up with empty stomachs. And they had to be empty stomachs for a long time, so right, in order to end up on the beach. Another theory is that one of the whales moved into shallower waters due to the illness and keen to help the sick whale. The pod followed. The only problem with the story was all the whales on multiple beaches had empty stomachs. So more likely than not, they were just too weak to go any longer. The situation is extremely rare, well it was, this is 2014, and that sperm whales have not been seen in the area for over 25 years. Yeah, they can't. The only reason they come to land is to go up on the beach. They're deep divers, right? They dive deep, and they sleep in that water at night, and then they dive all day the next day. That's just the cycle of life for them. 4 pilot whales die after a pod of 13 washed up in Donegall Beach. Is that New Zealand too? Or is that UK? That could be UK, I don't know. There had only been 1 live stranding in the country when a harbour porpoise was refloated in February that year. Said the incident is the 13th stranding reported on the shores that year. There'd only been 1 in history before that, and that was this year too. That year that the story came out. Necropsies began for 25 pilot whales found dead. They died from fear-mongering, that's what it was. Cat parasite found in western Arctic belugas. Oh, it looked like cat parasite. For the first time, a parasite that can affect humans has been found infecting, since 2014, Arctic beluga whales killed for food, suggesting one way climate change could pose a threat to the human health. Of course, climate change is 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry. Everything is pulsing energy for millions of years. Carbon doesn't do that. Carbon is more babies, more puppies, more insects, more birds, more animals, more plants, more trees, more oxygen. It also now believed to be responsible for the die-off of 406 grey seals off Cape Breton Island in 2012, which is ground zero, by the way, for radioactive fallout from Fukushima, University of British Columbia researchers say. Don't forget to get your selfies. Get your paper suits. Let's roll.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with.
A very, very little lady. Ionizing radiation induced damage. And all these studies of ionizing induced radiation, illnesses and injuries and diseases, non-immune deficiencies and illnesses, but yet officially they have very, very little data. Oh, poor little scientists, they have very, very little data. Does anybody believe that crazy witch? A skank? Radiation-induced intestinal injuries. Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with in terms of elevated background levels. All of our data about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the doses delivered in less than a minute. And so we just don't know how much radiation can be, what kind of contamination level can be considered safe?
We don't know. Very, very little data. I have very, very much. If I have so much, how come they have so little? Where's Dana to? Oh, there he goes. I'll check my shirt, the volume going. So how can you have such little data? I wonder, how does that work anyway? Response to ionizing radiation. Yeah, we see a lot of that, actually. Whale pod stranded, 2014. Palm sperm whales in South Australia. 6 whales dead on Monday. The 7th seen several kilometers from the rest of the pod. Total coincidence, and they're emaciated. You can even see the peanut head on this fella. Rest in peace, my friend. Stranded longfin pilot whale on the Essex River starved, says the experts. / emaciated. They starved to death. Very poor nutritional conditioning. According to the Zoological Society specialist, Dr. Biederfucker. Female calf found on the beach near Gold Hanger dies in very poor nutritional conditions. Yeah, it is. I think that qualifies as emaciated. I'm sorry, that's a brutal emaciation. Look at the back section. Holy shit, eh? That is skinny. But you can really see it in the back one, right? It really stands out. Nuclear just destroys. That's what it does. It's only good at one thing, and it's ruining everybody's day and future. Pregnant killer whale J32 was starving, necropsies reveal. Killer whale starving. A whale that eats 340-something species. Look up killer whale eats. And it was malnourished because it has leukemia. It's producing more white blood cells than red blood cells. Because it has so much radiation in his body is acting as a permanent trigger, right? His immune system is not able to uptake nutrition. There's lots of food at that time. They could eat something, right? Thin layer of blubber had not been feeding adequately for an extended period of time. Radiation sickness, radiation poisoning, see? This was a twin gray whale, baby gray whale. Conjoined gray whale calves lie dead on a beach. The fishermen found the calves joined at the waist with 2 full heads and tail fins. So it had 2 heads and 2 tail fins. And he put that netting around to tie onto it to drag it ashore or something, I'm guessing. A 2-headed whale, post-Fukushima. There she is. That's different. That'll make a nice postcard. Everybody should send that postcard to the nuclear academics and scientists in your communities. Take a screen capture of it and send it to all the pro-nuclear scumbags out there. I think I might get me one of those pictures. Let me put that over my pile of oh shit stuff. It's a terrible picture, isn't it, boy? Girls, folks. I've never seen anything like it before. Endangered giant leatherback turtle washes up dead on the same beach as 7 sperm whales. Over 400-pound turtle. Officials say the 2 incidences are coincidental, so they're not related. Look at that. That's spectacular, right? You know what the scientists would have done if you seen that? They would have got their picture. Jumped on that back there and started smacking it on the butt, trying to get their picture taken. so the kids can have a few laughs. You got to desensitize them before they go to college, right? Sperm whale spotted off the OC coast in rare sighting. Sperm whale. I'm looking for somewhere to die by the looks of it. 50 whales, 50 sperm whales. Wow. They're usually found in tropical or subtropical waters. They're looking for food. And you can see the sharpness of some of their spines. That's not normal. A sight never seen before off the coast of Orange County. That's Florida, right? I've been counting whales and been underwater for 35 years. 35 years, not 35, Dana. Smarten up. I've never seen a large group like this ever. Yeah, no shit. Known to have the largest brain of any creature that have lived on Earth, weighed up to 45 tons and eat about a ton of squid a day. That's a lot of squid, folks. And most whales remain in tropical or subtropical water all year. They'll remain in their feeding ground, and they'll sleep standing up, basically, just below the surface, 30, 40, 50 feet below the surface, right? And then in the morning, they'll head down, 6,500 feet or something? 2 kilometers? That's their cycle of life. And when they travel and feed, they stay at the surface and dive about 20 minutes to an hour and a half. Not anymore. These are socializing. They're rolling and sticking their heads out. It's extraordinary. And I don't know of any large groups we've had here socializing like this. I've never seen anything like it. Nobody I know in Southern California has. Dead sperm whale surfaces moon is. Two dead sperm whales washed up in a small voe in the southeast in Shetland on Sunday. It doesn't belong in Scotland, which is Scotland, right? I could be wrong. Won't be the first time. It's strange the boat came ashore at the same place. Yeah, not anymore. It was back then. What year was this, by the way? 2014. Yeah, it was strange back then. And I was like, only 2? Dude, Fukushima. Mysterious deaths of Gulf of Alaska whales trigger stepped-up investigation. Mysterious deaths. 2016. Deaths. Mysterious die-off of large whales in the Gulf of Alaska is now classified as an unusual mortality event. We've had a lot of them post-Fukushima, that's for sure, and they ain't going to stop anytime soon. They'll stop when they're all gone, I guess. The toll has increased now a total of 30 whales, 11 fin whales, 14 humpbacks, 1 gray whale, and 4 unidentified whales. Wow. Additional deaths off the British Columbia, where the toll is 4 humpbacks, 1 sperm whale. Only 1 dead Alaska whale has been sampled. Test came back negative for domoic acid. Scumbags, eh? From what we've seen, and we covered this way back in the day, starvation. It was clear starvation. Peanut heads, very defined spine and vertebrae. The last such declaration of Alaska was issued in 2011 in response to a mysterious disease that was killing and sickening ice seals. We've covered that story, the actual story itself. 2011, it was massive radioactive fallout, and the skin had the whale or the seals had lost their fur and had lesions all over their skin. It was hot particles from Fukushima, clearly. That's the new norm now, right? People are getting so used to it now, they're not going to stop them from having a good day on the beach. It's crazy, right? We 100% live in a twilight zone. But very little is known about the effects of radiation, Dana, so you can't say that. I know, but actually I can't because I'm not a scumbag like she is. Different toxicity of radiation with different dose rates between the testicles and the bone marrow cells. Well, first off, if they got a lot of radiation, they're producing radioactive stem cells for the rest of their lives until they finally show up dead, right? and are producing radioactive hormones. But I got nothing to do with all the madness. Dose rate-driven responses, ionizing radiation. So they know everything. To suggest very little is known is, and this is MIT University, the biggest promoter of nuclear, coming out suggesting very little is known about, and suggesting there's only low doses came out of Fukushima, was massive doses. It was unprecedented, we've never seen before. And so, you know, she got taken care of for the rest of her life, even today, she's well taken care of, right? All she had to do was come out and stab everybody and every species on the back. They're good at that. That's what they do. And they're professionals. They act professionally, too. I got to give them credit. Sweet. I was going to say to James, do a track on the shrimp. I'm too bonehead. I didn't say it. Now he's going to do a track on the and I don't get the credit now. What a rip-off, man. I was actually going to say that, see? And I forgot to, because there's a lot. When I start off a show, it's like madness. It's like my brain is like an egg in a blender, right? It's like, ionizing radiation is a carcinogen, but the reality of it is, Dan, is very, very little is known. Honest Indian, there's very little known, Dana.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with.
We got nothing. Very little is terrible. I kept saying, we're the best. We need more data. How come I can find it all, but she can't? How come none of the academics corrected her? In an audience full of academics, if you watch the whole presentation, and you can find it linked underneath the presentations I showed you earlier, right, where I came out and audited their presentation, including that video there from MIT and from Harvard University and Stanford, I think it was. I've done them all, Yale, Berkeley, everybody else. But this year, I was lazy. It's true, I was too lazy to do the rest of them. Year's not over, you haven't got me yet. Don't give up hope on me yet. Assessment of DNA damage in healthcare workers occupationally exposed to low doses of ionizing radiation. No, but very little is known, Dana, so... Your face, Dana. Chronic ionizing radiation may suppress resistance to pathogens in aquatic plants. That's fear-mongering. You're fear-mongering, Dana. Time-restricted feeding prevents ionizing radiation-induced stem cell damage. They know everything. There's nothing they don't know. They're geniuses. They know everything, except for what's the human experience and respect for the planet. Not being a scumbag. They know everything, though, except for all the basic etiquettes of being a human. It's genius. They just pump those things out. They interbreed with each other, and then their children are more mutated, heartless, soulless creatures. That's them, right? The scientists now to go down there laughing. You're all dead now. You're big shots there the other day, splashing water. You're dead now. Spectacle. Bit of a spectacle tonight, are we? On ionizing radiation-induced sperm cell injuries. Okay. Ionizing radiation-induced lung injuries. Of course there is. But very little is known. As long as you say that, then, oops, my bad. We need radiation that attacks nuclear scientists and gets rid of them. That's the best radiation. That is a good radiation. Mysterious outbreak killing Arctic Alaska ringed seals. Scores more are sickened, which is, I think a score is 30 or something, is it? Some so ill that skin lesions bleed when touched. It was originally published October 13, 2011. It was updated in 2016. Which meant they took something off, edited a story that we can't get back. Some so ill their skin lesions bled when touched. They're not sickened, they're dying of brutal illnesses. And we got pictures of them with no skin. You can get right up to them, literally put the camera on the side of their head and take a picture of their ear. They didn't run away from you. I've never seen that. As a commercial diver, like I go in all of these rock piles, the stupidest places on the planet, to go to work as a diver. And when you're working the coastline, and you can't get close to them. They're very curious, but you can never get close to them. They're very evasive. I've came up on them when I've been working on the ocean floor, and there's ledges and rocks and caves, and I hate caves. I hate caves as a diver. I hate it. I can't stand it, because that's where the monsters live, right? In the caves. You see their eyes in there. You're like, oh shit, I'm not going over there. Because the giant Pacific octopus is like a 16-foot wingspan on them, but their eyeballs looks to be about the size of a dinner plate. You don't know what fear is until you're in front of a bunch of rocks and you got these two great big eyes right alongside your head looking at you, and you're like, oh shit, man, it's about to go down. And you can't do jack shit. You're a diver. You're the most awkward thing in the ocean is the diver. There's nothing eloquent, nothing graceful about the commercial diver. They're just this big mass of equipment. They must look like freaks, eh? It must look like what we can think a robot from outer space invading our planet would look like. We're laughable, right? We can't do nothing. They swim circles around you 5 times before you can make a full circle. It's a very uncomfortable feeling when you have encounters down there. I once had a giant. It was a giant golden California sea lion, 1,500, 2,000 pound male, and I was working there. It was just before Christmas, anyway. I wanted to go ashore for Christmas. And we had this little lull in the weather, right? It was fairly calm. And we had a chunk of quota left in that area, and you had to clean it up before you could move to the next area. We were picking red urchins, purple red, 3-inch, right? And for the Japs. And this big albino, California golden sea lion, shows up, and he's friggin' aggressive. And aggressive to them, they're blowing bubbles. They'll blow bubbles at you. And the first one to go to the surface is so-called loser, right? But I'm a commercial diver. I have endless supply, so to speak. And they don't like that at all. And so they'll rush you. They'll pick up speed. You got this great big torpedo, looks about 25 feet long because the way water magnifies things, coming at you. And you're about to shit in your pants for sure. And then they turn at the last second. And then wait for 2-3 seconds, and this wake of water comes in and hits you, and it'll roll you over and over and over. I remember one time I was in this big bed of urchins. All the rocks, there was these rocks all about waist high or bigger, and they were covered in perfect sized red urchins. And we have 500 pound bags. And so you're picking 2-3 at a time with the rake and throwing it in the bag, right? And you're picking 20,000 a day basically. But you want really good quality, and so you got to crack them open. You actually got to eat them underwater. Make sure they're sweet. The Japanese want sweet stuff. And this big sea lion gets in my face, and I turn around. He's like right here, and just I've never been hurt by him. You just can't control your fear is the problem, right? And he burns away from me, and he spins, and he comes right back at me, straight in. And you can just see him, all the muscles, his whole body's rocking, and he's picking up speed. He's not very far away, and then he turns. He knows what he's doing there. He sends me a wash, and the wash rolls me. And I'm rolling through all of these sea urchins. I got sea urchins stuck in me, and they're very difficult to get out, by the way, because they have microscopic spines. So very hard to get out. You usually got to cut alongside of it, and we have surgical tools with us when we're out there for long periods. and local anesthetic and stitches. We'll fix ourselves up typically. If you can get the right, I could do it, but a lot of people can't do it, right? And there was one kid out there, he fell in a bag of sea urchins. I don't know how many he had in his face, but it was a lot. And the helicopter was coming out to get him. He was in bad shape because this stuff will cause you to swell up, right? And he was loaded. And we spent about an hour and a half waiting for the helicopter, and that whole time cutting him open, trying to get these pieces out of his face to save his life. But anyway, back to that story where I digress. I'm sorry about that. I'll just finish up with this one. So anyway, the big sea lion does it again to me. The male sea lion. It's the male sea lion that'll do it to you. The females don't care. They'll play with you all day. Right? They're there to have a bit of fun. No aggression at all. But the male, he doesn't like you. He doesn't like anybody. Definitely don't like anybody that blows more bubbles than he does. And so when I finally come back to the boat, I had around 15 holes in my suit. And so, you got repair kits, but that's a lot to repair. And you got to dry the suit out, inside, outside. And so you're up late at night anyway, again, fixing holes in your suit, knowing that there goes another $1,500. I'm going to have to buy a new suit because of that encounter. Because I'm full body dressed, I'm full body dry suits. My hands are dry, my head is dry, my face is dry, I'm full body, right? And a bunch of holes is not a good thing. And it's very difficult because the water rises up your suit anyway, enough to be an issue. And it could be dangerous at the surface, right? Could get stuck upside down. Your biggest fear is getting stuck upside down. Alaska walrus hauled out on the beach shows symptoms. I forgot I was doing a show. I was yakking away that time. So, these stories I can go on for months. You wouldn't believe the stuff I could tell you I've seen and done as a diver. You never get boring. Never a boring moment. Alaska walrus hauled out on the beach shows symptoms similar to ring seal ailments. You get a lot of master divers coming out there were instructors. And usually within a day or two, they'll pay you to go down and get their bag and equipment because they left it down there and they can't go back down there. They can't handle the current. And we always try to start them off slow, right? It's basically 1 in 100 divers will stick it out. And some people will just, they don't make it, right? They found at least 100 seals with telltale mangy hair and skin lesions. That was the radioactive fallout, hot particles. They're stuck on the ice. They get out on the ice and get heat in them all day long, right? And so they have they're lying in the radioactive fallout on the ice and it's still falling on them. And compromise your immune system. Reports of nearly 150 other seals with the illness have come in from villages outside of Barrow. And the natives up there, of course, they eat seal. And so even preparing the carcasses out there, you can end up getting them radioactive too because of cross-contamination. I'm scared you might pass it on one way or another and the whole ocean could be affected. No, that's exactly what happened, unfortunately. You had every right to be scared. And you were right, unfortunately. The sickest ones don't move much on the beaches. They have blisters or wounds that bleed easily, including around their noses, eyes, and especially the rear flippers. They're not deathly skinny. It's not like they're dying from malnutrition, but they're not in a great body condition. Well, they can't eat anymore. They're dying, right? They have radiation illness. 9 whales appear to have died at the same time. And I bet you if you'd done a study after Fukushima, that first 2 months, on sores on people's arms and faces showing up, you would have found an incredible amount, I bet you, from the hot particles falling out. The original hot particles, which were fuel fleas, could have made it across on the jet stream, right? And they're splitting atoms. So they get on your skin, they're splitting atoms. They're electrically charged. At least 9 fin whales have been discovered floating dead in the waters from Kodiak to Unimak Pass since late May. It's an unusual, mysterious event. Not anymore, it's not. Now it's an everyday thing. We rarely see more than 1 fin whale carcass every couple of years. I remember that way back in the day. We usually We rarely see more than one. And not even, so every couple of years we might not even see one. Now you see them all the time. There are all kinds of dead whales. But that's a really important facet, isn't it? I gotta put that over my shit pile, I guess. The never-ending holy shit pile that I got there. Yeah. That's a sobering thought, isn't it? No, that version don't exist. So far, there's no smoking gun in this environmental mystery. Yeah, living in denial is a wonderful thing. But you're running out of time. That's 2015. Krill, small schooling fish, including herring, capeling, sand lance, behaviors and diet. That's what fin whales eat. And of course, they're not that far up the food chain, right? They're right after the krill. All of these will eat, well, except for the krill. But they're the migratory species too, see? So there's many species dependent upon that every year for a migratory cycle. Copepods, of course, microscopic animals. Yay, there's more whales on the beach. Shock pictures, mystery of why up to 30 endangered whales turned up dead at the same beach. Not a mystery no more. 2050, like, I've never seen nothing like it. Well, I mean, this was in Peru or Chile? Yeah, this was, they feed on copepods, which are these here. And there was 337 of them washed up in 2015, 2016. And you can tell he's thin. They're not that thick as whales, but when you see the tail like that, and the spinal column that's sharp, that's emaciation, right? That's clear emaciation. And when you see no blubber, you can see the definition of the spine, the tail section in vertebrae. That's a clear. There was 337, they eat the microscopic animals. And the krill, of course, they can live up to 10 years. They say lifespan 2 to 6 years. I've seen, depending on which kind of krill you're talking about, there's many different versions of it, I guess. You know, the invertebrates, these are what they are, without the backbones. And just the algae, the 700 algae in British Columbia, there was over 5,500, but they were much smaller than the krill. The krill are fairly big. Size of your pinky, maybe, the size of your thumb even. 1 to 2 centimeters. Phytoplankton, diatoms, zooplankton, microscopic animals. And because they're converting the microscopic animals into something edible for a lot of species, right? And then you got the anchovies, the squids, the sardines, the squid, etc., etc. Then you got bigger like the mackerel and the herring, and you're working your way up the food chain. So is the bioaccumulation. The waste released by them enriches the water for microorganisms and is an important component of Earth's carbon cycle. You know, carbon is not part of climate change, I can tell you that much. Carbon is good. It's the life cycle, right? The only plume that covers the whole planet symmetrically is anthropogenic man-made radiation. Crabs are gone. Yeah, good one. And as long as I don't touch my glasses, I'll be all right. So very little is known. Did I mention that tonight? Very little is known about the effects of ionizing radiation, low levels. Every one of these studies are about what ionizing radiation induces, by the way. And at best, we're only going to go through a fraction of them tonight. I got just absurd amount of them. Ionizing radiation for treatment of pharmaceutical compounds. So the pharmaceutical companies are using ionizing radiation to so-called treat pharmaceutical wastewater. It's just one of the most sickest things I've ever heard, by the way. The industry's crazy. Because theoretically, you can kind of make it inert, but now you irradiated it. It's still not inert. It's still toxic to everything. But ionizing radiation is brutal to everything with replicating cells. Right? It's not natural. So we don't have an autoimmune trigger or any species to defend against it. So there's an instant reaction that's permanent in your body when it's in proximity or inside your body. Regulations of reactive species during ionizing radiation. But very little is known about it, Dana. I know. I hear you. A novel approach to prevention ionizing radiation induced bone loss. So they got a million different ways to try to mitigate the radiation, but the radiation still won't cure anything. And they're desperate to find something. If they ever cure cancer in an animal or whatever, they're going to take the animal and put it in a big glass container, display container, put it in a transport truck and take it to every school on the planet forever and ever and ever. That's the reality of that. I got no concept of how they were able to get away for this long and to kill your loved ones and your friends and your families in the hospital. So when you got chemo radiation therapy, the death certificate should say you died of radiation poisoning and chemical poisoning. Your organs were destroyed by the radiation and chemicals. But, the doctors will lose their licenses if they go against the industry. The industry is very powerful. But you will find some that have pains of conscience have come out and acknowledged that exactly what is happening. But very little is known about man-made anthropogenic low-level ionizing radiation, Dana, according to MIT and many, many others, endless others. Complexity of responses ionizing radiation in the plants and the impact on the interacting biota factors. Designing a simulator for generalized, multi-hit, multi-targeted radiobiological models in cancer treatment through ionizing radiation therapy. Calling radiation and therapy in the same word is egregiously criminal. It's constitutionally offensive. Kodiak whale necropsy autopsy adds to the growing body data about the 2019 gray whale deaths. July 19, 2019. Beach gray whales used to be relatively rare. Normally, most years we don't see a single gray whale. It's usually every couple of years we might have a necropsy. That's some statement. That is a fascinating statement, isn't it? You'll never hear that statement again. I can tell you that much. Let me delete a bunch of this stuff because sometimes if I triple click, I'll end up at the bottom of my session, which has around 650 of these screen captures in it. And if I do that, I might not find my way back. I will eventually, but it might take quite a while to find my way back to where I want to be. So I just banished all of those to a black hole. We'll probably never see it again. But it's hard to say with Dana, actually, because what have I got done here? Oh, okay. I got to delete that other stuff. I didn't delete the other stuff because it looked too yummy. I didn't want to delete it. Hang on. That's the whole thing with it. You got to do what you got to do. Because otherwise I get confused. I'm very simple-minded, right? So very little is known about radiation, according to MIT. Dr. Jacqueline Jans. But of course, she refused to acknowledge Chernobyl. Must be pretty convenient, eh? Beach gray whales used to be relatively rare. And normally most years we don't see a single gray whale, she said. It's usually every couple of years we have a necropsy. That was 2019. Many whales, including this one at Surfers Beach, have been on the thin side. I'm not seeing one yet that I've been convinced was absolutely emaciated. In 2019, there's lots were clearly emaciated. Peanut heads, shoulder blades sticking out, the spinal column defined. You can see their rib cages. They look thin to me. She said the blubber doesn't have a whole lot of fat in it. And the profile of the animal looks a bit shrunken. Yeah, well, what's she seen? Maybe so. Beach gray whales used to be relatively rare. Yeah, those days are gone. Now all the gray whales are emaciated, every friggin' one of them. You can see the rib cage from the shoreline. West Coast gray whale stranding declared an unusual mortality event, May the 31st, 2019. U.S. states 2019, 2020, 2021. So 2019 was that story. In Alaska was 48, Washington 34, Oregon 6, California 34 that they found. That's 122, which meant at least 1,200 gray whales had died. Because at best you can hope to find is 10%. Right, that's the consensus. Ooh. Canada was kicking ass though. In 2019, Canada had 216. So plus the Americans, 338, 39, 340. Which meant over 3,400 had died of just gray whales. Yeah, just gray whales. Manatees are now officially under an unusual mortality event 2021. 14 humpbacks, 11 fins. Didn't we cover that earlier? Yeah, we covered all this earlier. I must have screwed up. I'm always screwing up, so let's keep going. So very little is known about man-made radiation. Except they know absolutely everything. There's nothing they don't know. They know it all, man. And they got it all down pat.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with in terms of elevated background levels. All of our data come about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the doses delivered in less than a minute. And so we just don't know how much radiation can be, what kind of contamination level can be considered safe.
Very little is known. Except that's not true, is it, Jacqueline? Ionizing radiation activities and neurotoxins and blah, blah, blah. They know everything. There's nothing they don't know. Like, they're doing studies on stuff that it's possible to appreciate. They've done studies on everything. They studied everything. Everything you can imagine, they've studied it with ionizing radiation. There's nothing they haven't studied. And all those studies at night are different studies. And right, it gives you an insight of how they actually do studies. And so when you hear them say very little is known, or there's no adverse side effects, or we got it under control, or anything like that, is absurd to suggest you do. Because imagine what they're doing with a study is only a percentage of a percent of what's happening from the radioactive fallout all the time, and the 1,000 fuel pools worldwide that are splitting atoms into the environment. All of that stuff is ionizing radiation. That's having an effect upon every species, every plant, every insect, every bird, every animal, every mammal, every human. There's nothing, all the pollen, there's nothing that this stuff don't infiltrate and wreck. There's nothing on a planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. Oranges are fruits too. Just kidding. Somebody's going to hit me up for that one. Our George thinks oranges are fruits. You ever heard that one? That was a gag from years ago. Our Georgie thinks oranges are fruits. And somebody was, no, it's a vegetable. I think oranges are fruits. I love oranges. I used to. Some years I don't like it so much. Some years I can't get enough of them. How dead whales became the symbol of a political battle in New Jersey and elsewhere, 2023. They held a press conference. ZIP, that's a nice name, eh? ZIPF. That must have been tough growing up with. Held a press conference in Atlantic City calling for President Joe Biden to step in and do some immediate federal investigation and halt offshore wind farm activities because they were killing the whales, right? No, it's crazy talk. Since December the 1st, authorities have documented the death of 11 whales off New Jersey. At least 12 dolphins died along New Jersey shores. Yeah, but it wasn't from the windmills. It's from Fukushima. They starved to death. They were dying before the windmills showed up. He's been working with NOAA to address vessel strikes and entanglements, which are the major causes of preventable whale deaths. And that narrative is really important to the degenerate agencies. That's the cover story, right? Researchers are studying unusual high numbers of deaths among 3 whale species since 2016-2017. The minke whale, North Atlantic right whale, and the humpback whales, which coincidentally were all dying of starvation. The whales are busy gorging themselves. No, they're not. They're going into places they've never been before, trying to get food. They haven't gorged themselves for several years. This is 2023 story. They're clearly emaciated. It's a bit of a recipe for disaster, at least with respect to the vessel strikes. That's a desperate propaganda piece. Researchers are studying unusual high numbers of death among 3 whales. All of them with an unusual mortality ticket and showing emaciations. Dead whale calf found on a beach, 2023. It was thought that the young female calf died of natural causes. It was emaciated. That's quite a coincidence because all the whales are emaciated. All the seals are emaciated. All the sea lions and seals are emaciated. It was thought the young female calf died of natural causes. No, as usual, it was emaciated. Whale carcasses on Martha's vineyard fuel speculation by wind turbines. NOAA said the whale deaths are part of what they call an unusual mortality event, which at least 200 dead humpback whales have washed up along the East Coast since 2016. Well, it wasn't just humpback whales. Because that's what they do. Like they'll compartmentalize you into thinking of whales. But what they're talking about is just a single species. So when you start lumping in all the species, then you got just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of whales showing up dead on your coastline. So it's a very naughty thing that they're doing there, and it's on purpose. It's called social engineering. So they're very methodical. When you see that, and that's what we do, we look for patterns. When you see that kind of stuff, that's called social engineering. Concluded in a January report that there is no known connection between offshore wind activity and whale deaths, but some remain skeptical. Just a pro-nuclear, looking for somebody to demonize. That's quite the convenient. And they can get traction, right? To ask for more information would seem reasonable, said Michael Moore, a senior scientist at the Scum of the Earth the worst humans conceivable, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, the lowest forms of life you'll ever come across. Just 100% degenerates, like MIT. But hey, very little is known about anthropogenic man-made radiation, Dan. Didn't you know? Don't you know? Don't you know? Radiation-induced injuries. All of these studies about radiation-induced injuries. But very little is known about low doses of radiation, Dana. MIT said so.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data, about how much radiation we can live with.
Yeah. And I had a friend of mine who had her uncle worked at Berkeley University just after Fukushima. And anyway, she reached out to him with an email because of what I was saying, right? And she just couldn't wrap her mind around it. Very educated lady, but really, really nice people. She's a good friend of mine. So I didn't push her to her. You know, I was concerned. And he got back to her. It took him like 4 or 5 days. He got, no, everything's just fine, honey. And she read it for me, right? That's what he said. She believed him because he's a big shot professor at MIT. But it took a few years before she started to realize that I was actually right. Neuroprotective effects of silymarin and melatonin on radiation-induced brainstem injuries in rats. But very, very little is actually known, Dana. I know, that's the way it is. Ionizing radiation, they know everything. There's nothing they don't know. If you should have seen all the tumors, if you've seen all the studies that I went through today, like I got dizzy multiple times. And I'm going to do the same stupid thing to myself in a few days on chemo radiation therapy. That's some sick shit right there, man. Holy shit. And the theme is chemo radiation therapy. And these are sadistic, twisted, demented people. That industry is absolutely unhinged. It hates humans with a passion. On the prevention of brain damage due to ionizing radiation in rats, like there is no, the only study, the only thing that people equate radiation with as a good thing is Spider-Man and the Hulk and the Wolverine and a few other fictional caricatures that were scooped up by the nuclear industry and used as mascots, right? Like SpongeBob and Simpsons and stuff like that. But for hard science, radiation is just evil. It's evil. There's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. What else could it be, see? There's 1,000 fuel pools spitting this stuff out all day long. Perpetual, invisible plumes on their way out to attack anything with replicating cells forever and ever and ever. When you have forest fires, you're liberating absurd amount of radiation back into the environment because you can't destroy it. It might have been in the forest for 60, 70, 80 years from nuclear testing. It's going to be liberated back looking for something to hurt forever and ever and ever. Sperm whale found dead on the North Maluku coast, of all places. After swimming away, became stranded just hours later on a different beach and died on the shore with no visible wounds. And then they show you that. That's an emaciated whale. Exceptionally rare 30-foot-long whale washes up dead, the juvenile humpback. But that's not a healthy humpback at all. It'd be nice if you could see its head, but you can't. In 87, orca had a fashion of wearing a dead salmon as a hat. For one summer only, a strange trend spread around several pods. It was a thing, hey boy. Around 30 killer whales spotted in Montego Bay over the weekend with no clear explanation why so many had gathered. 2023. I actually stepped off the boat, or went to step off the boat, and I had a killer whale looking up at me. I would have landed on his head. I was all strapped up with all the gear. I had, because I was working on the ground, on the ocean floor, I had extra weight belts on. I was wearing like 20 pounds on each shoulder. And so I would have sank like a rock on top of his head. I really was something different back in those days, though, I must admit. Like, what I was doing, there was 2 marathons in the human body each day. It was no joke. 5, if I didn't get injured, I would have had an incredible life. 5 more gray whales because I was greedy. 128 days diving straight. Should have retired like 3,000 hours before that. I was going to retire that year. That was going to be my last year. We were going to do underwater logging for old growth from the 150 years before. We had 20 ponds already through forestry and fishery, had all the rights and passages already figured out. We were going to have a submarine built that year that could go down and lay the explosives on, because that was all old growth, right? And there's no oxygen down there, 600 feet, 700 feet deep in the mountain ponds. And it would have taken me the rest of my life to clean up those 20 ponds. And you're talking about $700 a cubic foot of that old growth birch. I'd be rich beyond comparison. There'd be nothing. And I got to give them, when I went and seen fisheries and forestries and everybody getting permits and everything, they were all into it, man. They were game on. They had 20 ponds for me. Some of them had major landslides of old growth. You're talking about $50,000, $100,000 a log, right? We had it all, man. We had the barges. We had a friend of ours had a Sikorsky helicopter, heavy lift, right? And the sub was only $300,000. And you can go down 1,200 feet and lay your explosive. We had a Navy SEAL who was going to do the explosive charges and chop the logs off. All you're going to do is go down and lay an explosive on it. Well, you're going to put the air bags on it. You're going to inflate them. And then you're going to set off the explosive and chop it off. And then the airbags will carry it up to the surface. The Sikorsky will drop it down on the barge, and the barge will bring it in. And the federal government had first bid on the logs. Oh, well. And then I got injured. But anyway, I started up a company, Marine Productions Limited. I was going to put 100 cameras on the ocean floor, and then Fukushima happened. And well, there goes that idea. And we didn't have the bandwidth on the internet in those days. But we were laying the foundation, everything. We had the company, we had a legitimate company up and running. I did. I've been investigating an unusual rise in the number of gray whale strandings since 2019. An unusual number, a perpetual snowball effect of emaciated whales showing up everywhere. 2015 to 2023. So that's only gray whales. That's not humpback whales. That's not all the other whales, right? It's just one species only. It's a stunning amount for one species. It's an absurd amount for one species. When you start adding all the species up each year, now you're talking about a nightmare. And that's how they're manipulating people, because they only talk about species instead of the consensus. The population dropped by nearly 40% over the last 7 years, which was 10,350 had died since 2015 or something. And then since that now the number is 14,000. And there's around 13,000 left, and they were all emaciated last year. From 27,000 to 16,550. 650, that's what I said, right? Which is 10,350 died since 2015. Just gray whales. Oh, no, Dana, they're all killed by ship strikes, Dana. The total number recorded by NOAA was up to 2007 was only 1,200. Not all of them would have died. Preliminary information has shown that a large number of whales were emaciated at the time of their deaths. Preliminary information. Yeah, because if you actually do the study, you will find that almost all of them, even the ones that were hit by ships, were only hit because they couldn't get out of the way because they were dead or emaciated. And that's an important statement too. And this folder is just full of nightmares. And so each show is going to be running a little bit later than normal, or I might start earlier, or whatever the case may be. But that's only because I got so much to get to. I got too much. It's an insurmountable amount there, and I'm stupid. I'm stupid enough that I think I could do it. And so, like a moron, I'm going to try to do it. Because that's what morons like me do. We try the impossible. Common sense doesn't enter into the equation. And it gets in the way, right? Preliminary information shows a large number were emaciated. Hey, what's you doing? What's the gray whale's diet? Fish, krill, squid, other animals. But they live on the bottom of the ocean, and they're scooping up their food off the ocean floor, small microscopic animals. These ghost shrimp larvae, crab larvae, plankton, small fish. They're a bit of a scavenger. So they'll scoop up the ocean floor and filter it. And so they get absurd amounts of them too, right? Herring eggs. It's crazy, right? Worms, larvae. Very small prey, which are the first ones to go post-Fukushima, which makes sense why you would see them showing up emaciated early. Gray whale die-off feared as starving whales migrate north. This is this year, April of this year. The whales were already in poor shape last year, 2024, when they began their 12,000-mile migration south to the breeding ground. They had no surviving calves. When they left this year, they're headed north. The whales we are seeing are extremely emaciated. They have bulging ribs with shoulder blades and vertebrae visible even from the shore. It's horrific. They're extremely emaciated. They won't be here in 2 years. I know scientists are celebrating. Get out the champagne, the whales are going to be gone. Thank God. Won't be long now. Look, that's a perfect picture of riding on a whale. Concern over a rising number of whales and dolphins off Westford coast. Alarming concern. Whales are on their coastline. You're supposed to celebrate it, not be concerned, right? They're concerned because, and just let me get rid of all of this, because you can't keep up with it otherwise. It's hard to put a dent in this pile. I thought we hit it pretty good last night. I kicked it pretty hard last night. We're into the show now for quite a bit. We still haven't barely got a dent. Nah, that's a lie. What do we got left in this pile? Let me see. That's a lot. It's 360 left in this pile. It is what it is. I can't change it. Wouldn't want to. We're telling a story, right? That's not the one. Let me scroll down a bit. We already done that. Let me get rid of that up here because I keep falling for that. All right, right here. Yep, that's where it's supposed to be. La, 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 la. Yes, winter down there now. We went from almost 3 digits, almost 100 degrees. Well, it probably was 100 on the humidex, to 41 degrees. That's quite the jump in the temperatures. It's actually cold. Okay, we're going to call it a night, I guess, at this stage. We're going to call it a night at this stage. What time is it? Oh, it's 4:44. Maybe I'll go for a little bit more. I'll go for another 10 minutes. Let's keep going. Concern over rising number of whales and dolphins off West Coast. This is a crazy statement imaginable. We don't really know the reason they're all coming, but there are some coincidences we're exploring. So imagine if all the animals came out of the forest and started walking down the road going somewhere else. That's basically what they're talking about, right? It's a surreal experience for them. They're shocked to find a huge small-toothed tiger shark. This was the first for the island of Ireland and possibly the only second recorded instance of this species turning up this far north. Concern is there's something driving these species to our shores. 20 dolphins arrived recently. If one is sick and comes close to shore, the others will join it in sympathy. That's not true. That is an interesting statement. Giant 75-foot whale found washed up on the Kerry Beach. That's emaciated. That's brutally emaciated, by the way. For the first time ever, a narwhal is stranded on the Belgium shores. We just covered a massive turtle on their shore, doesn't belong there ever, and a killer whale that's unbelievably emaciated. In fact, I think I started off the show last night with that picture. So a narwhal, for the first time in history, a unicorn, an actual unicorn, a male, on the banks of the river Shakes, or whatever you pronounce it, 50 kilometers from the ocean. Wow. 50 kilometers from the ocean, folks. And I seen pictures like, they're not pictures, I seen this in real life when I was young. In the good old days. Beluga whales and narwhals go through menopause. Prior to the new study, only humans and 2 other species were known to experience menopause. Belugas are unique because they can spin their whole head. That's the only whale that can do that. Like a cat or a bear or an animal or something. They're very social whales. They're quite unique. Up to now, only humans and orcas and short-finned pilot whales were known to stop reproducing decades before the end of their lives. 2 new species have now joined the exclusive menopause club, beluga whales and narwhals. Killer whales, females generally stop reproducing in their early 40s, and they could have lived to be 60 to 80, with some known to reach 100. They got this really long post-reproductive life, which is a really strange biological phenomenon. But they're the matriarchs, right? Yeah, look at that. Wow. Been a long time, but I've seen that in real life. When you get trapped in inlets now, right? We get a lot of the beluga whales here too, by the way. And we get walrus here. You don't see them unless you're out on the ocean, but they're out there. And draggers will pull up their tusk all the time. Based on that information, the researchers found that the beluga narwhal females stop reproducing in late 30s to early 40s, even though they live into their 60s or longer. But very little is known about anthropogenic man-made radioactive fallout, unfortunately. The reality of it is they know everything about ionizing radiation at low doses. They know absolutely everything. And if you take a screen capture of every one of these studies I showed tonight, and then you just go through them one after another. You'll appreciate how many facets the ecosystem this stuff is absorbed into. Like, it's hard to comprehend it, but over the next 3, 4, 5 shows, you're going to see a lot of this stuff. And then you're going to really start to appreciate why I say the things I say, where it is absolutely everything becomes contaminated with radioactive fallout, because it absorbs into everything. It acts like potassium, it acts like calcium, right? It acts like the normal minerals that your body needs to replenish on a regular basis. It's absorbed in the same pathways, exact same pathways.
Now, unfortunately, we have very little data, almost no data about how much radiation we can live with in terms of elevated background levels. All of our data about the health effects of radiation come from a situation in which all the doses delivered in less than a minute. And so we just don't know how much radiation can be, what kind of contamination level can be considered safe.
And so they know very well what's going on. They have no illusions. They know better than me and you. And now you know too, right? Because you've seen it yourself with your own 2 eyes tonight. Rationally, humpback whale deaths, 2023. Well, it's been going on a lot longer than that. And if you're not familiar with Fukushima, you need to watch last night's show, the first hour. And that'll get you up to speed on Fukushima very quick. We laid a good foundation for those that are trying to understand and comprehend it. But once you learn, so if you never watched anything and you watched last night's show and tonight's presentation and a couple of more, then you're going to be have the ability to extrapolate on your own, right, a hypothesis and be accurate. And like really accurate too. Like, not, you got a ballpark, you'll be incredibly accurate. Because we give you the ability, but it's hard to work out on your own. It's hard to find all the information. It's hard to aggregate. It's hard to know what belongs where, keep all your ducks lined up, in other words. Meanwhile, scientists, advocates for investigating recent fatal strandings of humpback whales in New Jersey, New York, and New Jersey beaches. 6 turned up in 2022, followed by dozens in the first half of 2023. It's because they're on the migratory route, and that's where they gave up the goose, right? They ran out of energy, and they died on the coastlines. It's where they washed up, where they ran up in desperation because they're so emaciated. Urgent warning is 2,000 dead birds wash up on the Scott beaches in less than a week, 2023. Cases of the deadly outbreak of avian influenza, avian flu. So first off, avian flu has been around for millions of generations of these species. It didn't cross the barrier. Why would it cross now? I'm not saying it didn't cross. I'm just saying, why would it cross now? But I'm also saying, according to the evidence that we've been gathering up this whole time, the majority of these were accountable by starvation, by a broken food chain. But the avian flu could jump to the other species because their immune systems are now so compromised through bioaccumulation. Right? So it could happen. I'm not saying it did, but I'm saying it could because of that particular attribute. And same for you. The dead birds, which included common turs, the kittiwakes, they're like small seagulls, but they're not. But they look like them, right? But they're their own species. And their colonies failed the last couple of years around here. Herring gulls and black-headed gull. The numbers of death more than tripled, with 1,000 dead on Wednesday and a further 800 birds found today. 600 dead Arctic tern chicks found in Northumberland. 600, which means there was no food, so the parents left them. Bird flu suspected. So they're trying to conflate now starvation, and we covered a bunch of those incidences last night, right? There was 3,400 sea lions that were the most severe emaciation you ever seen. I covered last night. They were conflating that And the pictures were severe emaciations. I've never seen worse. Like instead of 700, 800 pounds, they were maybe 80. Bird flu suspected is a conjecture, that's an opinion, and has no right to be published when you're talking about something like this that deserves the right prominence, right? It should never be just tossed out there. It's a very dishonest thing to do. It's a desperation thing to do. That's an Arctic tern, right? By the way. Is that what we were talking about? Arctic terns? Does it tell us? Yeah, Arctic tern. And I've seen, instead of seeing hundreds of thousands here, I've seen 2 or 3 last year. And last year we covered 1,000 ponds. There was no fish jumping, no birds in them. And just endless parts of the coastline with no migratory species whatsoever. Took 14,000 pictures. We still haven't got to them. The number of dead birds on the Faroe Islands this year has been much lower, about 500. I did import all those pictures onto the new computer, by the way, that is feeding into the system, and it can handle those high volume pictures. I am intending to get to it. Trust said numbers have increased in recent days with kittiwakes, which are small, look like small miniature seagulls, but they're a different species. They're not gulls per se, right? Black-headed gulls and goldemots, the most affected. But why wouldn't they all be infected? Air pollution particles may be cause of dramatic drop in global insect numbers. Yeah, air pollution known as radioactive fallout. University of Melbourne. Why would you trust anybody from Australia in the nuclear industry? Researchers from the University of Melbourne and Beijing Forest University, University of California, Davis, report that an insect's ability to find food and mate is reduced when the antennas are contaminated by particulate matter from the industry, transport, bushfires, and other sources of air pollution. Well, what would happen to their antennas if it got radiation on it, pulsing energy at the speed of light every second for 600 feet, I wonder? Like cesium-137 does. And we know there's 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, according to the French government. Fade into the night, fireflies facing threat from climate change and light pollution. Firefly larvae are quite ferocious predators. They feed on worms and slugs and snails, especially mosquito larvae in some ecosystems. That's cool, man. That's a cool insect. Glows in the dark, and it goes after the the pest. That's pretty cool. Fairweather said insect population worldwide are declining, and fireflies are seeing similar fates. What people don't realize, he said, is the benefit the fireflies have for gardens and waterways. How can you be angry at a firefly? You better stop it out there and kick your ass. The fireflies that people see in their summer gardens are the adults of the species with a lifespan of a few weeks. And the bugs spend up to 2 years underground as larvae, going after the bad guys. Way to go, fireflies. The larvae are the unsung and unseen heroes of gardens and waterways because they keep the ecosystem clean. You hear that, Marge? They keep the ecosystem clean. La 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 la. One more story. Let's get one more. I see one more there. It's only 5 clicks away. More than 50 polar whales die after mass stranding on a Scottish island. 2023. They're not looking very healthy. It could be the largest fatal mass stranding we've ever seen in Scotland for decades. It's forever. Polar whales are common across the world. The UK largest stranding of polar whales was in Scotland in 2011. The year of Fukushima, eh? When 77 were found stuck on the country's northerly shore. Because In 2011, that was the pulse event itself from around 36 reactor cores and 8 fuel pools at the top of 4 reactor buildings. Last September, 200 were beached along Tasmania, Australia. We covered all of this as it happened. 35 survived and were refloated. Tasmania, the largest stranding in 2020, we covered that one, was 450 pilot whales were found. As I showed you earlier, in 2014 and 2015, 16, the whales were always empty stomachs. They were starving. After that, they stopped reporting on the health of the whales. Just saying. Just saying. That's all I'm saying. But very little is known about the effects of low-level radiation, Dana. MIT, Jacqueline Yance. Hey, Jacqueline, here at Chernobyl. Go down and tell the orphans they don't matter, Jacqueline. No, actually don't, because I know anybody cruel enough to say what she said is cruel enough to do what I just said. You heartless creature. Imagine if you took Jacqueline's wage, and gave it to the children, to the abandoned children of Chernobyl. The world could be a lot better place, couldn't it? All right. We got to get one more thumbs up. We need one more thumbs up. We got 34 votes. We got the yellow stream of death on my screen all night. Was the video streaming all night? It says YouTube wasn't receiving enough. I shouldn't show that because then they know they got into my computer, right? Did Fukushima nuclear fallout and the perpetual radioactive releases permanently destroy the ecosystem worldwide? Hell yeah, Dana. Certainly did. I'm kind of stuck on that song there. List in a gram. Now, James got a lot of good stuff he put up on his site over the last number of days. Unless he posted something in the last few minutes. And he didn't, unfortunately. Then I'm going to go with less than a gram. Because I've been streaming again, 2 hours and 37 minutes. That was the same as last night, wasn't it? Donna B donated 130 on the weekend. I forgot to mention it last night. Thank you so much, by the way. Bless your heart. And we need 20 people each month to donate $100, or I'll be in a rough position. And links are below to my PayPal. So it's PayPal, Dana Durnford, you'll see it directly to me, right? You can't make a mistake. And it's a good thing. Nuclear industry needs a person like me here torturing them, right? We'll see everybody tomorrow night. We're going to pick up tomorrow night. And we got a bunch to get on. Tomorrow night we're going to be still die-offs, and we got to finish off this lot I got here. We also got to get into the pictures from recent research that we've been doing. We'll talk about that on the next show. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. Best wishes. And you can find this song over at James' site. It's called Less Than a Gram. He put it out about a week and a half ago. Let me start again. You'll see that picture. Thumbnail. Take care.
Right beside old Unit 3 sits a shell-marked waste you see. Tanks of resin stacked with care, holding what the pumps caught there. TEPCO field, two plans to show. One says yes, the other no. Each awaits a coming call. Neither clears the path at all. Less than a gram, that's what they've got from Unit 2, and that was a lot. Fuel remains in buried rooms while they measure water plumes. Early 30s, so they say, when the work might get underway. Decommission down the line, mid-century's hopeful sign. 880 tons remain, none retrieved from 3's domain. They debate what space to claim. Still the building tin